StreamYard has terrible visuals. I always look much worse on StreamYard than I do on Zoom, and I don't know why. But
It's the backwards face thing. It's freaking me out.
yeah, yeah,
Oops. I'm trying to like keep the mess from the
yeah.
hotel room.
Oh no, it's fine.
Okay.
We once had a writer come on, and it took me a minute to realize that his pants were on the bed behind him, and I didn't know whether he was wearing any.
He probably wasn't if he was
It
a
was
writer.
David Duchovny.
Well, that's a good person to go pantless.
Yeah, he was very funny. Okay, let's go. Hi, I'm Caroline Levitt. I'm the co-founder of A Mighty Blaze, the book along with Jenna Blum. Mighty Blaze is the book initiative that was started at the beginning of the pandemic to help authors who lost their tours, independent bookstores, and readers too. And what we do is we bring you great interviews. And today I'm so completely excited because we have Jenny Pentland. This will be funny later. This book is absolutely hilarious. And I cannot say enough great things about it. It's the perfect book that you want to read for a time like now. Jenny Pentland is writer, mother, and goat farmer. Now, don't you want to read it after hearing that? She's also the daughter of Roseanne Barr. And along with her sister, she was the inspiration for the characters Becky and Darlene. I'm just so happy to have you here, Jenny. I'm thrilled to talk with you, especially after reading your book. Which again, I want to tell people, you please go to bookshop.org where they'll help you find your local indie and you can order from it, or just go to your local independent bookstore. We will have a link for it, which I see right up here. Also, don't be shy. If you have questions for Jenny, put them in the chat and I will be asking them of Jenny later. Okay, so your book is hilarious, and I always believe that writers are obsessed into writing what they write when they write it, that there's a why now moment that jumpstarts a book. Because reading this book, you probably could have written a book when you were 8 from all your experiences. So I wanted to know, what was the why now moment where you just started writing this? Did anything feel scary to you about writing it?
Yeah, it was terrifying. That was actually the why now, was because I had just come out of like a really bad sort of reclusive phase where I was unable to like go shopping by myself or do anything by myself or have my kids' friends over to the house because I just like completely shut down. And I started kind of pulling myself out of that hole slowly by doing all the things that I was afraid of. So like, going to Costco was something that really triggered me. So I would go to Costco and I would walk up and down the aisles until I panicked and freaked out and run out or have my husband come get me. And then I'd just do it again and again until I could kind of handle it, I guess, and realize that panicking and being afraid is sort of an illusion in a way. It's a response more than an actual feeling. And I had to start breaking all that stuff down. So one of the things that I did was not allow myself to say no to things that scared me. I had to say yes to all of them. And like within 2 days of me making that pact with myself, my friend who'd been asking me if I was ready to write a book yet, she called me and said, "Now are you ready?" Just like out of the blue. And I was
like, But you did. And did you get less scared as you were writing, or did you get more scared until you got to the end?
Both. I think I got less afraid of not being able to handle my emotions, but more afraid of opening that Pandora's box and seeing how capable I was of handling emotions. Like, I knew I could, and I knew I wanted to, and I knew I wanted to really thumb through all the experiences that I had been through and process them finally. But also there was a lot of things that were scary for me, just putting myself into sort of the public eye in any way. If you read the book, you'll see that was a lot of where my trauma came from, was my mom being in the public eye and me being sort of adjacent to that and thrown into that as a young person without any, like, there's no tools or rule set for that. So
let's talk about that, because I'm sure you've talked about this over and over again, but I think people listening would want to hear about it. You had a remarkable upbringing, or it started normal, and then I think you were 12 when your mom, Roseanne Barr, became suddenly so famous
Mm.
that just by dint of being her daughter, you were famous too. And you started acting out. And as a, as a really busy, famous star, your mother felt that she needed to help you, and she did it by hiring experts or various institutions like a fat camp or a wilderness camp. And instead of helping you, they seemed to actually be making stuff worse. That must have been like a totally schizophrenic version of life for you. What was that like? And when did you know you were in trouble? Or did you ever know you were in trouble?
Um, no, I never actually felt like I was in trouble. In that sense, I felt helpless, but I felt like there was an end line with my 18th birthday. Kind of, there was a, worst case scenario, it would be like that until I was 18, and then I would be free or whatever. I didn't consider that the lasting effects of PTSD would stay with me. So, as an adult, I felt more like I am in trouble from that situation than I was then, because I was just really in survival mode, and being a rebellious teenager,
Of
and playing
course.
that role as well. Like, I was just kind of doing the best I could in the moment, and not thinking too much about the effects or what that would mean for me later, or mentally, or
Did you feel that your real identity was being sort of erased by Becky and Darlene? I mean, I can't imagine how weird it would be. You said a lot of the plots on the show came from your life and from your conversations.
yeah.
That must have been so strange for you to witness. Did you feel like you needed to act out perhaps more to make sure that people knew who you were as opposed to being the model for Becky and Darlene?
Well, the thing is, I never really got to watch the show. So beyond knowing that they were modeled after me and my sister, I had only seen one or two before I got sent away, and we weren't allowed to watch TV where we were at. Um, so I didn't really get to monitor them so much on a weekly level like everybody else did. But I
You must
definitely
have
knew.
watched later, though.
Yeah, I watched it later when I was like 23 or 22, I think, in reruns. I got to watch it.
Oh, is
And
that like?
it was really weird. It was super weird, because it was like I could see where things from our lives had been taken, and tried to, they were trying to talk about these complex issues, but I really think like the voice of the kids, or the teen voice was kind of missing, and my voice was missing from that. But at the same time, it wasn't really our story anymore at that point. It
Right,
was like
right.
almost a parallel reality of what would have been if things didn't change for us.
I wanted to also talk about, there's a thread running through the book about how your mother was really kind of, at least men would try to micromanage her. First, the studio and as a woman comic, and then Tom Arnold. We all know that Hollywood culture can be toxic, but in your book, it became almost this hilarious nightmare. And I was wondering how this shaped your feelings towards people trying to control you. I just want to show the book coming in.
Well, that's a good question. Yeah. I've always had issues with people trying to control me. I think I've always had a different understanding of what being a woman or a girl or female was, because I was raised by these radical feminists. So it never occurred to me to kowtow or to play the role. And that's caused me a lot of grief in my life, a lot, and a lot of hardships, because I'm supposed to act in these certain ways and I can't bring myself to do it. And even to this day, that's difficult. For me, because I just have a different understanding of it. I have an understanding of it being like a very spiritual and exalted sort of position to be a woman. And it's always been like, oh, you're going to have to fight. You're just going to have to fight. That's just how it is. And, because of that, I'm very hypersensitive to every word people use with me. So like during these interviews, even, or just in general in my life, when people ask me questions, I am really, really hyper aware of the words they use or the tone of the questions or any of that. So I kind of feel like I'm always on guard in a way. And I don't love that because I naturally am a person who just kind of wants to lay in a hammock with a bunch of kids and just be who I am and not have to fit into any of those roles. And
I don't blame you. You know, you managed to create this amazing life for yourself. You live on a farm, you have 5 kids, and you're writing. How, somebody with your upbringing may not have turned out that great. What was it about you that gave you the resilience to be able to figure it out and have this amazing life? And by the way, you're an extraordinary writer.
Thank you.
That's like hard to put that stuff on the page, but you did it. And there must have been something very brave in you that allowed you to do that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, I don't think that I think like on paper and like on the back of a book flap, it looks really nice to, have 5 sons and live in Hawaii and farm goats. But I've said in a couple other interviews too, I'm trying to be really frank because I don't like the idea that, the woman having it all thing. Like I'm a
No
nightmare.
woman has it all. Nobody,
no.
nobody has it all.
Nobody does. And it's not a thing to me, but throughout my life, everybody's always been like, oh, you do this and that. And you cook and you don't have a nanny or help. And, that's because the childcare comes natural to me. It's the being vulnerable in relationships that doesn't. It's there's other aspects of my life that are really, really difficult, especially right now after having opened that Pandora's box, like I was saying. So I think the bravery part comes from never wanting to be in the position again where I can't function and where like my kids' lives are negatively impacted, where they can't do the things they want to do because I am unable to support them and do those things for them because I've just crumbled. I don't ever want to get there again. And if that means like being completely honest all the time with every word that comes out of my mouth, then so be it. That's kind of like the point I'm at right now with like, I don't want any illusions around me, that I don't want anybody to have illusions of me, and I don't want to have any of myself. And I just want really to have this human experience and connect with other people. That's really all I want at this point in my life. So the book has really been a huge thing for me to connect with other people, and writing and being vulnerable and being honest and having other people read that and relate to it, even though my story is maybe not relatable, my feelings are, and the human experience and my processes are. And that's the part I really want to focus on, because I love my goats. I don't have them right now. I'm in the process of possibly moving off the island and just trying to get a more normal life for my kids elsewhere, where they, can be in a regular school and just have more opportunities and a few things like that. But like none of those things matter. It's the human connections and stuff. I think I'm really realizing in my older age that's all that matters.
That is all that matters. I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about that, being honest and being just out there. I always feel that writers are really the canaries in the coal mine, where writers go into those dark places that other people don't want to go into. And what happens is it's maybe terrifying for us, but then there's always the moment where a reader will come. Sure, readers have come up to you and said, me too. Me too. I felt that, or thank you for writing that. You said the things that I couldn't really say.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to say, and I was wondering if you agreed with this, that I always feel that there is, nobody can have it all. I feel like there's a cost for everything. You can say, yes, I have work that I love, but it's hard and I suffer greatly from it. Or yes, I have love, but sometimes it's really hard because I'm so anxious and I worry about this and this and this. And I think what you said is it's really important to get both sides about it, which is why I loved it in your book that, just even the title, This Will Be Funny Later, the later, it is hilarious, but it's also really heartbreaking to read about you being sent away to a place. You were in a drug rehab place and you didn't do drugs. You were in a wilderness place. And when you think about it now, I was also wondering, is there anything, when you think about it now, are you thinking about it differently than when you thought about it when it was happening to you? I mean, sometimes when you write, you figure out what was really happening that you didn't realize at the time. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, totally. I think that that was one of the reasons I wanted to write it. Like the reason the title is This Will Be Funny Later is because throughout my life, whenever there was traumatic events, I would kind of compartmentalize them and be like, this is so ridiculous and so silly that later on, when I'm able to like write out how ridiculous and silly this is, it's going to be really funny. And I would kind of compartmentalize these experiences into that to process later at a later date. And that was kind of just trauma response, how I dealt with it. And I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. You were talking about, how things are funny later, that you can write about it hilariously
Yeah.
now, but at the time they might have been very traumatizing
Yeah.
and bringing up a lot of PTSD and that kind of stuff, which I think makes absolute sense. And I actually think that's kind of an interesting way to live your life. I mean, I try to have a sense of humor about everything
Yeah.
because otherwise you drown.
Yeah.
Know?
I would have
You
died
drown.
without a sense of
Yeah.
humor. And I think that that's true for everybody in my life, like my grandparents and great grandparents that I knew. And that's just kind of been the theme. I mean, half my family escaped the Holocaust, and
Right.
those are hard jokes to make. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's a hard thing to make funny, and we don't joke about that, or we don't make fun of pain on that level, but we make fun of how ridiculous the universe is to have those things happen, like how silly the human race is to allow those things to happen. Like it's more joking about the zeitgeist or ideas or behind something than joking about the people who are experiencing pain because of it. And I think that that's where comedy comes into play. And can you hear that in the background? Sorry.
Yeah. That's fine. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's nice. I like noise.
Zip it. Sorry.
So, did any of did your
Sorry,
family?
they're coming in right now.
No.
Be
I love
quiet.
it. I love it. They can come and wave. I would love to see them.
Okay, because they might.
So, did any of your family comment on this book, or were they worried about it? What has the reaction been from your family?
In the beginning, when I said I was going to do it, I think like all of us suffered collectively so much PTSD around my mom's fame and marriage to Tom,
Of course.
and a bunch of other things you can look up if you're into it. That like when I said, "Oh, I'm going to write a book," it was like why would you drudge this back up? We just all started talking. We've gotten past this. And it was really important for me to write the book in a way where nobody is at fault, and nobody, like, it's just what it is. It's just what happened. It is my take on the ridiculousness of the universe. I'm not like, I was very careful to process my emotions while I was doing it, so that if I wrote something that kind of made me feel angry, that I would look at that and go, okay, I'm not over that one yet. So let's like work on this before we write about it. So I've always had a thing about first drafts, rough drafts, like, and I say, like, when I get an email that pisses me off or like gives me that response, that I don't send it until I've done enough drafts till I get to the point where I'm like, I'm sorry, I love you. And then anything in between that goes into the garbage, because there's no reason for it. There just isn't. And
that is great. That is great. I'm really glad you said that. I just, that sometimes those are the kinds of words that diffuse things. Just saying,
and
I'm
that's
sorry,
what
I
you're
love you.
really
You don't
trying.
have to.
I mean, that's what you're really trying to say anyway. Like, even when you're like,
Yeah.
you did this, this, and this, it's like, you're just trying to say, I'm hurt. I'm hurt. Okay, we're both hurt. So you're not going to say sorry first because you're writing me this shitty email, so you're not there yet.
Right.
But so I'm sorry, I love you. And it's never not just been the thing that like gets everything to the seed level, and the seed level is always love. And
That's
the
right.
seed level of everything bad is always fear. And that
That's
just is
exactly
what it is.
right. I read somewhere from a hospice nurse who said the greatest thing you can say to somebody who's dying is, "I hope you can forgive me. I forgive you. I love you." And I thought that is so perfect, and that's sort of like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think you're absolutely right. Ruthie, Ruthie has a question for you. Thank you, Ruthie, for the question. Everybody else, please get your questions in. Don't be shy. When writing this, did you start out just putting it all out there on the page, like just for yourself? Did you ever journal?
I've been journaling since I was 8. It started with like, oh, this boy doesn't like me, and I went and saw this movie today. And then, when I was locked up, it turned into deeper talks and issues. But I did always have stacks of journals around me, and I would lose them almost on purpose, so that I didn't want to hold on to that, and I didn't like burn them or get rid of them, but I never knew where I put them. And I've written things in places I'll never find them again. And that's true for the internet too, like blogs and stuff. I don't even remember starting, but yeah, I've always had to write. I've always had to. It's how I process things. And I think when I went to write this book, it wasn't, it was more like, I know there's kids going through what I went through now, and I know some of them. And I was thinking, what's the most I can do for these kids, my kids too, that even though they won't go through a lot of the same stuff I went through, to have an understanding of me and why I am the way I am, so that when they're processing the inadvertent trauma that I've caused them later, they can be like, oh, that's where she was coming from, and she did a good job. So that was like, when I was writing, what I got to, like, oh my God, look at what my parents were going through. They did a job I couldn't have done. And I think that, I wanted my kids to have something like that for me. Because a lot of the stories are things that, I'm not going to be able to tell my 1-year-old right now. And you never know how long you're around and stuff. I just really had always had that compulsion to have it down on paper, to help. It's really about kids for me, like everything has been, but like even in writing the book, it's about my kids having that, other kids going through it having that, and just that wanting to help people not feel alone. And those were the things I was like, everything I wrote in there were things I felt like I was missing, like that kind of honesty and that objective perspective and things like that.
In terms of the writing process, was there anything you learned about writing from watching your mom? Even though she was, watching your mom and how she structured stories and what she went through. And were there any particular lessons about that stuck with you?
Yeah, when my mom writes, she writes about these huge ideas, these huge problems, these huge ideas in the universe, things that you can't even touch because they're so deeply embedded in your subconscious that you can't reach them. And then she couches them in these little housewife jokes. And yeah, and the couching and the inferring and the leaving things to be the in between lines part of things too. Like I felt like when I was writing that I was trying to touch on these huge ideas, like my spiritual beliefs, but I was trying to put those in words and situations and events that were just daily occurrences for me. But I really was trying to talk about all of those parts of who I am and my experience here, more than the being Roseanne's daughter or public eye or whatever else.
It's interesting because your mom became so famous, I think, because of the housewife angle. It was
Mhm.
less threatening than, here I am, a smart woman, and I'm going to talk about these issues. Instead, it was like, oh, she's a housewife, and isn't that funny,
Yeah.
or isn't that even cute? And so it's different now for someone like you, because even though I think like women we're still not where we need to be,
Yeah.
but it's a lot. We don't have to be as safe as we were before. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, do you feel, now that you've written this remarkable memoir that I loved, do you feel braver to write another one now? Do you feel like, can you take the next step and write something even deeper, or do you want to write fiction? Or I know we talked a little bit about this before we came on here. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I just
No,
feel
it's
like the
fine.
writing was so great,
Thank you.
that I want to know, what are you going to do? What are you doing next that we can look forward to?
Um, I've made a joke that I want to write fiction so I can tell the truth. which
I
is
love that you said that.
which is true. I mean, I would like to, because you don't want to hurt people too at the same time. And also some things are just too like deeply sensitive issues. Like the kids that I was in those placements with, some of the things they had to deal with that were just so horrible and tragic and traumatic that I wouldn't ever have put those in the book. But I want people to know that those things happen, and that people don't just end up in mental institutions when they're 13 years old when they've been treated the way they deserve to be treated.
Right.
By the medical establishment or people in general. So, there's an aspect of that I want to talk about. Also, the last 3 years of writing this book have been just insane. It's been insane. And the pandemic and having a baby,
Right.
and all these other things that have even happened since last week. Like, life is just insane and crazy. And yeah, there's always going to be more to write, and I could write another book. At the moment, I like, my focus again is just kind of getting my kids stable. And once I get there, I think, you know what, though, that's not true. I'm writing all the time. I'm always writing, and I have my notes app, and I'm always writing it. It's more just like journaling, like the
Right,
last
right. But
guest.
those are the seeds that are going to be our fruit later. Did you,
Yeah.
when you were talking about the episode in your book about the episodes about Darlene and Becky, and um, did you ever yearn to tell your side of the story? I mean, you
Oh
said they
yeah.
took it.
Yeah. That,
Did
I
it
mean,
make
that was
you
a huge part of all of it, is like, um, maybe not so much there as in the press, when the press was, like, oh, Roseanne sent her daughters away. And even now doing press, when people's first question is like, how'd you ever forgive your mom for that? I'm like that right away is the tell. That's what I'm saying. Very sensitive to words and tone. Cause like I had several parents at the time, and it wasn't my mom's fault, but everybody always has to find the person at fault. And oh,
I
shit.
thought your mom was presented
Sorry.
really. Oh, that's okay. It'll give me an opportunity to show the beautiful book cover. I actually thought in this that your
Okay,
mom was
thanks.
presented really sympathetically, because she was drowning herself. I mean, what's it like to all of a
Yeah.
sudden become extraordinarily famous all at once, and then to
Yeah.
be dealing with all these men who are trying to manage you and trying to get things going, and then you have these kids. And when she got to the point of, I mean, you say it in the book, she knew something was going on and she had to find help for you. And
Yeah.
at that time, why not? Why not go to experts? What else could
Yeah.
she have done? She was being pulled from all angles. And I thought that
Well,
came
and you're
across
told that, like, your kid needs help, and are you going to help them or not? Like, of
right,
course you're going
right.
to, even if
Of
that
course you're
cuts
going
you
to.
out of the deal. Like, if you're a decent person, you're going to do that. And that's what it was. So, like, you kind of have to see the whole storm of everything that was just going on at the time. There's a paragraph in there where I said, here's the list of what my mom was going through in that short, like, in 1 year, starting her own show and writing, just all that stuff that was going on for her. I would have crumbled in a heartbeat. Like, I
I
have
think
no doubt in my mind that,
most people would have had nervous breakdowns. I mean,
yeah,
the fame, that level of fame, I believe really does something to you. And with
yeah, it
that
does.
statement, do you want to be famous? I mean, do you
Oh
feel like
God,
it must
no.
be hard for you to go out and promote this book, because I mean, that's fame and there's a price to that, even though everybody says, well, that's what I want. It's sort of
It's
like when you
it's a
have
little
it, you
different
don't want
now. No, I mean, it's a little different now. And I think also part of the reason I wrote it, I read some thing like maybe 20 years ago when my first kid was like a year old. And they were asking people in his generation, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they said in the 70s that kids said lawyer and doctor and like things that were going to make them money. And but also like a calling. And when they asked my oldest son's generation, they all said famous. And when they were asked famous for what, they didn't know. And that scared the shit out of me from where I was coming from. So I
You
was like,
didn't know for what? Oh boy.
yeah, they didn't even, they were just like, I want to be a rock star. Okay, what instrument do you want to play? I don't know. I've never thought about singing. Or, it was like, it was
Wow.
that. And I was like, oh, that's where we're going. And then the reality shows and everything that were going on at the time, which actually I think has actually done a favor to the illusion of fame, in the way that you could have a little slice of it if you wanted. It's not this like big elusive thing now that only the luckiest people on earth get. It's like kind of like, do you even want that though? And I think everybody's had a little brush with it now in a way that it's not the same thing that it was back then, which is, I think, is good, because I think people are really starting to realize that when you put people on a pedestal, that you're taking away from your own experience by comparing to them. I think that's why I'm so cautious about like the have it all thing. Is like, I don't want to be on a pedestal. I don't deserve it, and I don't want it.
Well, it's not that you become not human. You're not human if you're on a pedestal, and then that's
Yeah.
almost like people have to bow down to you, and that's just that's just not real. So how do you? I hate to ask questions about parenting when you're still parenting. So I'm trying to think of how to phrase it.
No, it's fine. I've been parenting 21 years. I can answer.
Oh, okay. So what lessons about parenting did you learn from being parented that you're passing on to your kids? And what would you like parents to know that you've learned from your own parenting that might be helpful to them?
Before I was a parent, I was a nanny, and I've always really paid attention to what kids have to say and seen them as human beings that were just, not grown all the way. I've never met a kid that didn't have a deep understanding of themselves and the world, even though sometimes it's unique. And I think listening to kids and seeing them as human beings is my parenting advice. Like, I have 5 kids. They're all completely different. They're totally different. Like,
isn't that weird when that happens?
Yeah.
That they're different.
I mean,
totally different.
But would you be the same, like if you and a group of 4 friends got together, you're not all going to be in the same kind of relationships,
That's right.
And I think it's that, like, we have that, like, how do we mold these people to be what we need them to be? And you don't. And if you try, you fail. And then you feel like shit about yourself, and your kids hate you. So my advice is talk to your kids as human beings with individual brains and souls and personalities, desires, just perspectives. And they are. And I think all my kids talk to me on a really deep level.
That's
and I think they feel safe talking to me, and that's enough. Like, if they feel like, sometimes they'll be talking to me about something and I'm like, don't do the thing. Don't be like, oh my God, are you serious? Like, just be like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, why do you think you're compelled to do that kind of thing? But like, I just think, like, my oldest son was really difficult for a couple of years. And, I wanted to be like, oh, he's difficult. But the truth of the matter was, I was being difficult. And my husband was being difficult because we were trying to mold him into this person that he was not. He was ready to go out into the world when he was 15 and get a job and be independent and not have every thought that he was having or thing he was doing monitored by us, and, told how he could be better at everything, like all of that. So I had to really adjust the way I thought, like, to the point, it's in the book, but like to the point where I was like, I thought I wanted him to graduate and go to college. And at this point, I just want him to get up in the morning and want to be alive. And I think that's a big thing for me.
That's exactly right. It's you have to put aside what you think they need and let them realize what they need. My whole thing is, I just want my son to be happy. You know? I just want him to be as happy as he can be. We have time for more questions if anybody has them. And while we're waiting for a question, I want to ask you, oh, wait, it looks like a question was about to come up. Oh, yes. When writing this book, did you read other memoirs from people who had experienced analogous things?
I didn't, and I didn't on purpose, because I wanted to completely immerse myself in my own experience and really process that without comparing my experience or feelings of things to anybody else's. Because when I read other people's, I get so deeply entangled in having empathy for them that I think for writers and empaths, it's really hard to not get entangled and to really have autonomy, like emotional, spiritual autonomy. And that's something I've always struggled with. So it's hard for me to listen to music. It's hard for me to read memoirs or anything that's not like kind of goofy or fiction. Like Geek Love is my favorite book. it's hard for me to do anything that's going to entangle me in any way when I'm trying to work. Like the rest of the time, that's just the nature of my life, and it's just going to be like that forever. And I just have to get okay with that.
So, what's obsessing you now and why? That's a question I always ask because I always want to know. So,
Obsessing
what's
me.
obsessing you now and why?
The constructs that we all live in that we just agree to without even trying to look at where they come from and what they mean to us and how we're furthering pain and suffering by living within them because we're afraid to like step outside of that line and be the person who does that. Like, I'm obsessed with constructs right now. I'm just like, is that one like, and it comes down to the only things that aren't is like love is
Right.
not a construct. It's not like, I don't care. State your case. You're going to be wrong to me. It's like love is not a construct. It's not. And that's about it. Everything else is like, and just like being an adult woman with kids and like, oh, I'm supposed to act in all these certain ways and I
No, you
can't
aren't.
do it anymore. I can't
Right.
do it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really healthy and that's really good. And it's also, don't you find it amazing when you realize that you don't have to act or be a certain way that
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually liberating to realize you can sort of make your own sort of reality. And I think if it's based on love, as you say, that's great. I have another
Yeah.
question for you. What question didn't I ask that you really wanted to talk about?
I do want to just tell people that the places that I was in, those places still exist. And people for profit obviously still exists. And
Right.
that I think we're all gonna have to do our part getting ourselves out of that and trying not to create situations where that's the case in our own lives and businesses and all of that. I think that that's something that needs to end, like stat, if we want to survive as a human race. So, profit over people has got to go. It's got to
I
go.
know,
It's not
it's
working.
terrible. It's definitely not working. We
We
have a
all got to
question.
do it. Like we all got to do it.
Yeah, we have to vote for better people and
Hmm.
speak up more. Ellen, thank you for a question. Do your children have good relationships with all those who parented you or with any who parented you?
That's a good question.
That's a good
Yeah,
question.
they do. They have good relationships with them. And I do too. I mean, Tom Arnold, that's a different story because we're not blood. So
Right,
like we haven't
right,
had to,
right.
we still talk. We still talk every once in a while, but my dad and my mom and my stepmom, my kids just love like, because we're all like in this, it's been like 20 years, since all this went down and we're kind of like in a calm space right now. And my mom loves my kids and
I
a
love
way
that.
that I don't know if you're a
Very nice
grandparent
of
or
I'm
I'm
not a
not yet.
grandparent, but I have friends who are, and they tell me it's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
it
amazing.
sounds amazing and I can't wait for that part. But yeah, that's the they get to be the grandparents and the kids get to see the best of them and
Right.
nobody has any control over anybody and it's great.
This book also seemed really cinematic to me. Are there any plans for it to be a movie? Are you writing a script or you have this face like but you're not gonna tell us.
No, I'll tell you that that was always my end goal, and I am
Okay,
in the process of like talking to people about how to do that.
great.
It'll be complicated, but I want to do it. That's all I've ever wanted to do, and I think that um, it's a great way to talk about complicated relationships, and I think that needs to be talked about right now, especially where everything's kind of divisive and everybody's mad at somebody or somebody you never thought you would have beef with. It's like you just
Mhm.
hate now, and family that you loved you don't want to be anywhere around, and just that whole like seeing different sides of people and all of that. I think it's a good time to kind of explore how to have complicated relationships. So I think that it would be a good thing to have out now. I think I'd be really into that, and that would be the next thing I'd want to write if these
Yeah,
kids stop.
I think it's definitely cinematic, and it was something that I would love to see.
Thank
So
you.
I want to show this book again. This will be funny later, a memoir by Jenny Pentland. It's a wonderful, wonderful, extraordinary book because it is harrowing, it's hilarious, it's thoughtful, it's important. Please buy it from your local independent bookstore. And I want to thank everybody who showed up here, and especially everybody who asked questions. And I really want to thank Jenny Pentland for being here to talk about her amazing book. Thank you so, so much, Jenny. And thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Stay on.
Thank you so much.